I've been a fan of both Risk of Rain games for a long time, though Risk of Rain 2 is an amazingly insane step up in quality from the first game. Though the genre it's in is quite simple since it's a roguelike, it still remains original, the 3D graphics are phenomenal, and the game remains fun even after multiple runs because of its great replayability. This game is flat out amazing, and so is the way difficulty is implemented in the game. And so today, I will be analyzing the difficulty of Risk of Rain 2. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you do, like and subscribe because I will be making more videos in the future like this. What is difficulty? You know generally what difficulty means, but it goes deeper than something simply being hard. Difficulty as a thing is highly opinionated and diverse when it comes to video games, but there are three main kinds of difficulty that a game can provide. They can be challenging like Terraria, as you need to have good reaction time and quick thinking when fighting a boss. Punishing, like Don't Starve Together, since you lose everything on death and must restart, or you must learn the game through experimentation like Oxygen Not Included, as with more info you can expand your colony with ease. Since Risk of Rain 2 is a roguelike game, the difficulty comes majorly in the form of challenge and knowledge, as the entire point is to go in, die, learn a bit, and come back, as these games are usually just quick runs without any saves between them, and because of that, the punishing aspect isn't really there. In specifically Risk of Rain 2's case, all of this is entirely true, and it doesn't really stray away from this normal difficulty formula of roguelites. Challenge. Challenge is a common big factor of difficulty in most video games with action, such as Minecraft or even Terraria, and of course Risk of Rain 2. Most roguelites are very similar in general, though with this game there are still many factors of challenge that it uniquely provides. Timer. Probably the most unique mechanic in the game is the timer. The more time you spend trying to beat a level, the harder the game gets. This encourages you to beat the level quickly with your own skill, and it encourages you to perfect your character in order to get further faster. I also believe that the timer is a great balancing mechanic as well, since if it didn't exist, getting all of the items would come at no disadvantage to you. If it sounds unfair to you at all, then also think about the fact that if you speed through, then you'll still get a few items and the game's difficulty will be lower. But if you get all of the items, the game will probably be as hard as if you sped through it because you have more buffs. Despite that, I believe the timer is still a great mechanic that adds to the experience due to its uniqueness, even though it kind of changes nothing. Skill ceiling. Skill ceilings are existent in pretty much every game to a certain extent, and unsurprisingly that's true for Risk of Rain 2. Unlike the last game I talked about, this game is a third-person shooter and it relies on how well you can aim, dodge, and react quickly to different attacks. That's the baseline, and the skill ceiling becomes diverse with all the different characters you can choose from. Some are easier to learn than others like Loader and Engineer, and some are more difficult like Huntress or Captain. Fast pace. With both the combo of high enemy density and how quick your health can be depleted, this game gives you no breathing room. Enemies always spawn right by you and there's no safety for too long, which always keeps you alert. Because of the pace, things can happen super quickly, such as your death, the spawn of a game-changing item, or you finding the teleporter immediately. There's absolutely no chill in this game, and staying cognizant is your biggest priority. Challenge conclusion. Challenge is a major aspect of Risk of Rain 2, which is a standard for basically all roguelike games. This aspect is handled extremely well and the game gains way more depth and replayability because of it. So how does it compare to the aspect of punishment? Punishment. This is the weakest kind of aspect that this game has. The entire point of the game is to beat it as fast as possible because of the timer, and even if you don't speedrun it and play it regularly, a regular run will usually just last for about an hour. Because of this, the punishment of definite death doesn't mean much, since probably like 30 minutes in you'll just lose your place in your items, which can be regained easily in another run. Lunar items. No saving might seem like more of an obvious choice, but it isn't a big deal since this is a roguelike game. But an even more punishing thing in this game has to be the lunar items. Until you understand what every lunar item does, they can totally ruin a run by making your character unimaginably worse, or it can make a run even easier if it meshes well with your character. The gimmick of these items is that they give you a very good buff and a very bad debuff. We'll take my favorite lunar item for example, Transcendence. This item increases your max health and it replaces it all except one with the shield, meaning that if you don't take damage in 7 seconds, you will fully heal. For certain characters like Rex and Loader, this will kill your run. Lunar items are more of a learning thing, but their existence as adding more punishment to the game is certainly notable, even though they aren't a necessary thing that you have to get in every single run, like items. Punishment conclusion. As a roguelite, there isn't much punishment in Risk of Rain 2, especially when compared to the last game that I talked about, and games that I will talk about in the future. Losing hardly impacts you, and the worst that can happen is that you pick up purity as Rex or Engineer. Knowledge. Learning things in this game is important. Sure, if you don't know what anything does and you keep getting items, you'll still be powerful, but knowing exactly what items do, especially lunar items, can change a playthrough to make it an even smoother experience. Enemies. There are a lot of enemies in Risk of Rain 2, and understanding their strengths and weaknesses is essential for defeating them. The other Lemurian, for example, can do incredible damage up close, and they try their best to get close to you to do so. So, through playing this game, you understand that it's best to get away from them as much as possible. Or as another example, Lesser Wisps are really weak, and there are a few, but when a lot of them bunch up, they become incredibly dangerous, since they have a nearly undodgeable quick ranged attack. So through experience, you learn that the best decision is to try and immediately kill them as soon as you see any of them. Naturally, learning bosses also works this way, and becoming knowledgeable about these things is executed in a very natural way, as nothing is directly told to you. Like learning most things in Risk Rain 2, it's smooth and it blends perfectly into an already great experience. Lunar items. Lunar items, as I said earlier, can entirely ruin a run, as they give you a positive buff and always a negative buff, or an ability that's good for specific characters. What's cool about it is that learning about these items isn't 100% needed, as they can be easily avoided, but if you take the time to find out exactly what each one does, then you can become even more powerful with each and every character. We'll use Transcendence as the example again, because I love that item, and with this item it can ruin your run if you play slow character or Rex, as with Rex, all of your alt moves require HP to use. And again, Transcendence sets your HP to 1 and replaces it all with shield. But for other characters that can dodge easily like Commando or Huntress, and characters that can get out of danger quickly like Multi or Bandit, this item is an absolute godsend since you no longer need healing items because you get all your health back in 7 seconds after not being hit. Other items that are similarly great for some characters like Shaped Glass for Commando or the Corpse Blossom for Rex. Learning about these items is great if you want to optimize your character, and honestly it's entirely worth it. The set of items is the most interesting in the game as it adds even more depth and it's also unique. Command. The command artifacts adds more importance to knowing what items do in the game. Usually artifacts add more challenge to the game by giving the enemies more power or enacting certain gimmicks such as the glass cannon artifact that sets everything's health to be extremely low and your damage to be extremely high. But with command, instead of adding a certain kind of challenge, it allows you to choose the item that you can pick up, and this applies to every item in the game. If you know what you're doing, you can optimize and fine-tune your character to be as powerful as possible without having to bend to the will of RNG. It's a highly interesting item as it not only lets you learn about which item works well with which character, but it also makes it easier to remember which items do what they do in the first place. Characters. Each character in this game is incredibly different and they all have different playstyles. Of course some are better than others, but in general, learning each and every character is a fun process as they all have their own strengths and weaknesses. For example, Bandit specializes in heavy burst damage, and in order to lead into that element, it's best to get the elemental bands and the lens maker glasses for higher damage, and for lunar items, it'll be best to get Transcendence and Shaped Glass. Each and every character has items that are specifically useful for them, and it takes a while to learn what works the best in order to beat the game the easiest way possible, assuming you have command on. Most of the time I have command on because it's a super fun way to optimize my character. But with RNG you're pretty much just picking up as many random items as possible and becoming OP because of that. Conclusion. Risk Rain 2 is an amazingly well crafted game, from its art style to unique mechanics and finally to its difficulty. If you already have Risk Rain 2, then now hopefully this video made you respect the game a little more, and if you don't have Risk Rain 2, then you should absolutely get it. The difficulty of this game is not only well balanced throughout, but learning what different characters and items do adds a ton to the experience. So finally, I hope that you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe and join my Discord server.